$32 billion. That was FTX's peak valuation. A number so massive, the human brain stops processing it as currency and begins treating it as an abstraction. $0. That was its actual value just 72 hours later. In November 2022, one of the most powerful financial empires on Earth ceased to exist. Its evaporation was not caused by a macroeconomic crash. It was not triggered by a sophisticated Wall Street short squeeze. It was caused by a single variable, deliberately buried inside the system's architecture, a line of code that allowed one man to quietly drain the savings of over 1 million customers. And nobody, not the regulators, not the auditors, and certainly not the venture capitalists who funded it, noticed a thing. Because in Silicon Valley, if you wear the right costume, nobody checks the math. The back door, the FTX Autopsy. Act 1. The Hubris. By 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried, universally known as SBF, was the untouchable son at the center of the crypto universe. He didn't look like a Wall Street predator. He drove a battered Toyota Corolla. He slept on a beanbag chair next to his desk. He famously played League of Legends during multi-million-dollar pitch meetings. To the retail investor, he was relatable. To the elite venture capitalists of Silicon Valley, this absolute lack of professional decorum wasn't a red flag. It was the ultimate signal of a founder genius. Sequoia Capital, the legendary firm that backed Apple and Google, wired him $214 million. After one of these pitch meetings, a Sequoia partner famously described their reaction to SBF playing a video game while asking for hundreds of millions of dollars. They didn't walk out. They didn't demand a forensic audit. They said they, quote, loved it. They were blinded by the most dangerous emotion in finance, fear of missing out. They handed over the capital, completely ignoring the reality of what FTX actually was. And what was it? It was a firm handling 10% of global crypto trading volume, managing billions of dollars in client assets, while tracking its finances on QuickBooks. QuickBooks, the off-the-shelf software designed for small bakeries and local dry cleaners. Act 2. The architecture of fraud. To understand the crime, you must understand the machine. FTX was marketed as a neutral crypto exchange, a platform where buyers and sellers meet. In traditional finance, if a trader makes a catastrophic bet and their account hits zero, an automated liquidation engine instantly sells their collateral to protect the system. It is a merciless, mathematical absolute. But inside the core code of FTX, there was a ghost in the machine, a hard-coded exemption written specifically for one entity, Alameda Research. Alameda was SBF's private crypto hedge fund. It was a separate company, but the reality was far darker. The two entities were completely intertwined. And buried deep within FTX's database, engineers had added a specific rule for Alameda's account. Allow_negative equals true. This wasn't a glitch, it was an infinite credit card. Allow negative meant that Alameda could withdraw unlimited customer funds from the FTX vault to gamble on high-risk venture bets, political donations, and Bahamian real estate. When Alameda lost money, which they did constantly, they didn't face a margin call. Their balance on the FTX server simply became a negative number. By late 2022, that negative number had swollen to $8 billion. You might ask, how does a company lose $8 billion in client funds without triggering a massive audit? The answer is structural negligence. FTX didn't have an in-house accounting department, and the firm they hired to audit their international operations, Prager Metis, had proudly announced that they had opened their first headquarters in the metaverse. You cannot make this up. $8 billion in real human savings, audited by avatars in a virtual world. Act 3. The Contagion. The illusion shattered in November 2022. The fire was started by a leaked balance sheet, published by the crypto news outlet CoinDesk. It revealed a terrifying truth. Alameda Research's massive multi-billion-dollar balance sheet wasn't backed by US dollars or even Bitcoin. The vast majority of their collateral was made up of FTT. What is FTT? It was a token invented and printed by FTX out of thin air. It was a circular Ponzi scheme of breathtaking arrogance. SBF created the token, kept the majority of the supply locked up to artificially inflate the price, and then used that inflated fake value as collateral to borrow real billions from his customers. When the market realized this, the execution was swift. On November 6th, the CEO of rival exchange Binance tweeted that he was liquidating his entire holding of FTT. That single tweet was the spark that ignited a 72-hour bank run. Terrified customers rushed to the exits. In 3 days, $6 billion in withdrawal requests hit the FTX servers. But the vault was empty. The money was already gone, lost in Alameda's terrible trades. On November 8th, FTX paused customer withdrawals. In the history of finance, the word paused is always a euphemism. It means empty. It means game over. Act 4. The Autopsy. When the empire finally collapsed into bankruptcy, the adults finally entered the room. Enter John Ray III, a legendary restructuring expert, the man who was brought in to clean up the catastrophic fraud of Enron 2 decades earlier. John Ray had seen the darkest corners of corporate America, but his first official declaration to the bankruptcy court regarding FTX was a scream of disbelief. He wrote under penalty of perjury, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." The forensic autopsy revealed a company run like a frat house with a printing press. FTX didn't even have a complete list of its own bank accounts. Multi-million-dollar corporate expenses were submitted in chat rooms and approved by supervisors responding with personalized emojis. And perhaps most terrifyingly, the private cryptographic keys that controlled hundreds of millions of dollars in digital assets were stored in unencrypted group email accounts. Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty on 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His top executives pled guilty. Sequoia Capital took their $214 million investment, marked its value down to 0, and published an apology letter to their own investors. But the damage to the industry's credibility was permanent. The thing that should truly disturb you about the collapse of FTX is not the magnitude of the wealth destroyed. Financial bubbles burst. Fraud happens. The thing that should keep you awake at night is how incredibly simple it was. It didn't require complex derivatives or high-frequency trading algorithms. It required a missing accounting department. It required an auditor operating in the metaverse. It required a room full of the world's most sophisticated venture capitalists, so paralyzed by greed and the myth of the eccentric genius that they refused to ask a single hard question. And at the very bottom of it all, supporting a $32 billion house of cards, was a single line of code. Allow_negative